About form, open form.
Mm-hmm.
How did you use that open form in a different way? I assume you used it in a different way, or the four of you.
Yeah, I guess so. Well, Cage made the form open by letting you decide how long a piece would be, for instance, or making you find out how long it would be by some chance procedure. This is, say, starting with the variations. Once you had established that, though, that was it. That was the form was no longer open.
Yeah.
Okay. Feldman open form is not really an issue at all. It just doesn't. I mean, there's one piece that people discovered not too long ago, a piece for two pianists, which is rather like some of my music, where it just there's music on the page. It even says you can play it, one or two pianists can play the material in any order, and he doesn't say anything about time.
Is that the intermission?
Yeah.
Right. Intermission number 6.
So yeah. So that's. But on the other hand, he never did that again. That was a one-time
That's the only
thing.
one.
It's the only one that's like that.
But that piece was written in '53, right?
Yeah, long ago. I don't know.
So that would be before
Even
Stockhausen's.
yeah, sure. Oh yeah, and or me or anybody. Yeah. No, I think the question of what came first is not so interesting. It's more a question of who did what, eventually, or who continued to do what, or who really looked into what it was. Someone tried it out and then decided no, it really wasn't that interesting. Otherwise, I suppose the nearest thing you get to open form in Feldman are those pieces a little bit later in the 50s for, say, 2 and more pianos, where each pianist has the same material, and they start together, but there's no time. They just proceed independently after that. So you get this constant kind of echoing back and forth. It's like a canon, really, but it's a free-floating canon because it happens at different... There's no regular beat, and each person can decide how long every single sound will be, and that varies. But that's certainly open because you don't... I mean, the image is always going to be the same, and it's a very distinctive image, but the actual procedure is open. And it feels that when you play it, I played it, and it does feel like an open form piece, because
But this was
you
Feldman,
listen...
right?
Yeah, that's Feldman. Because you definitely work by both playing and listening, and it changes all the time. So I guess I would call that open form. The person who I think first used the term is Earl Brown, and he does it for these pieces that were involving conductor, where there's various sets of material, and the conductors can determine which happens when and in what combinations. So this group of players can play section 4, that one can play section 2, and another one plays section 3, and then he takes out 2, leaves 3 and 4, brings in 1, takes out, and so on and so forth. And it's open in a sense. On the other hand, it's not that open because the conductor determines everything structurally in that. But this actual sound at any moment is unpredictable, even to the conductor. The conductor has a rough idea, but doesn't really know how the details of the sound will work.
What time was this?
These are the, I think, available forms. Maybe the first one that he did, available forms 1, is in the 60s sometime. I can't remember exactly when. Early 60s, maybe, something like that.
And he was the one that used
I think he's the one who introduced that term, and then, in my case, I guess the first one would be the Duo for Pianist 2 with the cues, which is open in the sense that, again, it's like the Feldman, there's material on the page, or Stockhausen Klavierstück 11 is another example of that, which is where you have a lot of material which can come in different arrangements.
Did Feldman or Stockhausen have anything to say for your composing in open form, for the duo?
Not that I can remember, no. In a funny way, at the very beginning we were very interested in techniques, because we were all sort of trying to figure out how to write the music at all. But it wasn't very long after that we just didn't worry about that. I mean, everybody did what they did. We were interested in just how it sounded.
So it was just the development, you can probably say.
No, what I'm saying is that we didn't worry about what to call it or what it was. What we were interested in is the sound of the music. And to a certain extent, I suppose we were interested, what is Morty's new piece like? Or what is John's new piece like? Or what is my new piece like? but not necessarily, unless you had some really outrageous new idea, but we didn't really worry too much about that. So in that sense, we didn't, the notion of calling it open. Cage did a lot of writing, because he partly earned a living by giving talks and presentations, and he liked to write. So that, actually I did a certain amount of that too. Feldman wrote relatively little of some, and what he wrote was very good, but and that's another way, by the way, of getting the contrast, is to compare our writings.
Oh.
Yeah, that's quite interesting, because we have very different ways of writing, very different styles of writing.
Like?
Yes. Cage he developed this notion of writing the way he wrote music. So by chance and by the layout on the page is more like a score than it is a written text.
Right.
I'm the most traditional. I write just the way you write
An article? Yeah.
The ideas might not be so traditional, but generally the form is, and I try to write as compactly as possible, short and very concise.
So not the German way of writing, right?
No, I try not to do that. And then Feldman, this was in the earlier period, I've changed now, but Feldman is very, what is the word, idiosyncratic. It's very Feldman. He's like Feldman. He likes to tell stories, he likes to make outrageous remarks, he likes to bring in analogies or examples from unusual places. It's very distinctive. And Brown doesn't write very much at all.
I haven't read much.
No, he's written. He did one piece for Darmstadt sometime in the 60s, 50s maybe even.
About
open form.
Yeah.
And that sort of was his credo, and that was it. And then he sort of let it go.
Okay.
I was interested, perhaps to a certain extent, a little bit more than the others, in writing about other people's music. Because I got ideas from doing that. And in fact, I started more or less when the earliest things, the first thing I did was write about Webern. And then I wrote a sort of presentation of all of this music as I saw it at the time. And that was Cage, Feldman, Brown, Stockhausen, Boulez, and so forth. It's called New and Electronic Music, I think, which I did in '57. But that was about the whole scene. So I had a tendency to do that.
So Earl Brown, he used open form, but...
Oh, we're on open form, I'm sorry, I forgot. What more do you want to know about it?
No, I just want the difference.
Between...
How you used it, and did you use it? I remember you wrote in your article, in one of your articles once, that Cage, for instance, used open form in a more oblique way of using form.
I don't know. I can't. I think we've talked about this. It seems to me we've covered this. At least I can't think of anything else to say about it. Because when you get back to, I'm going to talk about. I will just go back to talking about open form. For me, has to do with this interaction of the performers in ways that both allow and do not allow individual choice by the performers. This mixture of having to do something because that's the rule, or having to do something because that's what you want to do at that moment. So a simple example. There's situations in which you can do anything you want at any time. That's the extreme, that's complete freedom, right? And there are other situations where you absolutely have to, this very instant, make 3 sounds in a quarter of a second. Right? No question, you've got to do it. And I may even specify what the 3 sounds are. Just these 3 sounds right now. That's it. So, and what I like, this is a thing we haven't said, is what interests me is that whole range, from the complete freedom to very precise requirement, and that you can have, you can have all variations of it in between. You can have mixtures, and I like that. I don't want it all free, and I don't want it all determined. I will allow all free at one point, all determined at another, and in between I'll have all the other possibilities. 20% free, 80% not. 40% free, 60% not. 50-50, etc., etc.
So details are also important to you, right?
Very important, yes.
Yeah.
In fact, that's what I always tell students, is that that's the most important part. If you're ever careless about a detail, then you're in trouble.
But when we've been preparing now, I get the feeling you're very. It's very important with details, and you have written how it should sound.
Mm-hmm.
But then again, you can't always get
No,
the
you have
sound,
to be-
and you have to decide, take decisions of from what you write.
Right.
Right.
You have to solve problems. And that's a very important notion, actually, for me especially, I think, and perhaps with Cage too, not so much with the others, is what you might call pragmatic, which is to say, at a certain point, you just have to do what you can do under the circumstances.
So
And
that's
you do the
freedom
best you
then.
can do, or you try to be inventive. You try to find a solution to a problem that you perhaps hadn't thought would happen.
Yeah. With the pianos, there obviously are
Exactly,
very many
that kind of
problems
thing, yeah,
with
yeah.
all the.
So you do what you can.
Yeah.
I mean, we had a preparation. What was it? You were supposed to use metal wound with rubber or something like that. And it just didn't work. So we used 2 pieces of wood, completely different.
Yeah.
But it gave a sound that, in fact, was not that different, and it was okay. It was going to work, so we did that.
So you have
It doesn't mean that you don't try to do it.
Yeah, right.
Exactly the way you're supposed to. But when you realize there's no way that's going to work, then you, instead of saying, "All right, I won't do it," or complaining or something, you just go ahead and do what you can do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the details are important, but the freedom is still there
You still have to,
over the details, right?
Yeah. You have to be, you have to be adaptive,
Yeah.
and flexible with the world. You can't-
You're still flexible, right, with the things you're composing today.
Mhm.
What have you rejected, and what are you still doing from what you were doing before?
You mean right now? I don't think I rejected anything.
You're still carrying on everything that
But I mean,
experienced.
at any moment, I mean, I always want to do something that I haven't done before, always. But I know that I can't necessarily. I mean, part of it is just that your brain has just so many, and I'm getting old, so it's kind of worn out up there, I think. Or, I mean, I always hope, and I'm always open to the possibility that something new is going to happen. But on the other hand, I'm not going to do something different simply for the sake of doing something different. I don't think you can work that way either. Just say, all right, this is going to be different. You can't do that. So, I work trying to do something new, but on the other hand, I do have something which is a little different now, say for the last 15 years or so, is that I have quite a lot of music to write. I mean, there's always something I still have to write. Some commission, somebody's asked, I've agreed to do something, whatever. But I'm always, so that I'm certainly, to a certain extent, I'm pressed for time. I mean, I have to get on with it. I can't wait a year for inspiration. I have to get the piece done by the 3rd of March or whatever. And so in that situation, I just start to write and see what happens and hope that I will discover something new. But occasionally, I will also find that I'm doing something I did before. Or I think, okay, let's try a variation of that idea, that I had in 1950 about using only 4 pitches or 4 sounds and doing all the different ways that they can overlap and stuff like that. So it's all available.
So there's nothing that you think, oh, I did that then, and that's
No, I don't worry
totally.
about that. I don't worry about
No.
that. I mean, I don't do it because I did it then. I thought, oh, that really worked, so I'll do it now. No,
Yeah,
because
right.
I gave it up, and so it's gone. But on the other hand, the ideas behind it are still, seem to me usable. So if nothing else, if it seems appropriate, I'll put it this way, I'll use them.
But the freedom, I take, is very important still.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
The freedom really didn't come in clearly. Well, it did. I mean, it came in a Cajun way right at the beginning. For instance, there's a story that Cage tells about when I played the full prepared piano, and at his apartment, and there were 4 people there, and the window was open. It was quite noisy, and you couldn't hear the music because there was sounds from outside. And then somebody said, "Well, why don't you shut the window and play it again?" And I said, okay, I don't mind doing that, but it doesn't make any difference because the sounds from the outside are not an interruption of my music. So in other words, I had that sense of openness, if you like, that the music was meant to kind of work together with whatever sounds existed. Okay, which is a very Cajun idea, of course, but so that now I had that right away. And even at a time when Cage was not that, Cage was just beginning to have ideas like that. Anyway, that sort of happened at the same time.
So you think
That's, by the way, another reason for simplicity, because it makes it easier for the world to move inside your work.
Yeah.
right? You have those spaces, other sounds can happen, they become part of the piece. And you have no control over that, but they're not an interruption.
Yeah.
I was always struck by classical music, you know, you're listening to somebody like Beethoven and somebody coughs and everything, you know, oh my God, you know, and that always seemed to me very silly, because if you have to cough, you cough, you know, there's no, I mean, if you shouldn't go out of your way to make a noise, but sounds are happening all the time. And it's again this idea that what's there is there, and so just let it be. And same thing with the music. The music should be accommodating, and that's partly what the silences are about, because that allows things to happen within space.
So you would say that the piece is not really just a piece; it's
part
from the concept starts, and
yeah.
when the audience are living again, right? Would that be the piece?
You could say that, yeah.
About preparing the piano, what did you learn from Cage? What did you do with Cage about the preparing?
Yeah, but nothing directly, you know. We didn't take lessons in preparing the piano.
No.
I simply had his music. I mean, I told you the first piece of his that I knew before I knew him was Amores, and I just tried it, and I liked it, you know. And then I learned about the sonatas and interludes, and I tried those, and I liked that a lot. And I thought, maybe I could try this.
So that's what you...
Yeah. I mean, I was like so many people, I was completely entranced by the sound. I mean, the sounds you get are so beautiful and so wonderful and different and, you know, rich and all of that. And the whole situation is so interesting that you have, it's basically about percussion, but a very distinctive kind of percussion, because most percussion instruments don't make sound. I mean, the thuds and the knocks, okay, but the screws, those sounds, you don't get any other way. But it's basically percussion, but at the same time it's percussion which, I mean, I'm not a percussionist, that's a whole other discipline, but you can do it from a keyboard. You know, that's very magical. You suddenly have a percussion orchestra available to your fingers on the keyboard. If you have a little bit of technique, you can do all kinds of interesting things.
But you still think it's a different instrument from percussion?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it's obviously related to percussion, as the piano itself is related to percussion. Right. It's a percussive instrument in many ways. But on the other hand, it's not like percussion. For instance, it's much quieter than percussion. Prepared piano is partly distinctive by being very quiet. You know, it doesn't make a whole lot of sound. It's true that percussion actually, unless you just bang drums and cymbals a lot, is also not necessarily noisy. No. I remember being struck, I once heard ionization of Varaz in a big concert hall. And it was, even though it's supposed to, there are a lot of climaxes and big sounds, but it wasn't that. I mean, that's of course after we were listening to rock and roll, but that made everything else seem very quiet. Right. Even Varaz and even percussion. But anyway, the prepared piano is, it's more like a, what do you call it? Clavichord. It's music for a very intimate situation. You can't do it in Carnegie Hall. You can't play prepared piano.
So you have to have a small recital.
Exactly. It's a very intimate kind of music.
That's important though, to get the quality of the sounds. Right.
And that makes it arguably a little different from standard percussion, which is about larger sounds, and broadcasting and stuff. Yeah.
But still, scream. It's different sounds from percussion.
The actual, mostly. I mean, some overlap. I think the mutes with the rubber, they do sound like you can make sounds that sound like a wood block, pretty much like a wood block. That's there are certain areas where it's similar, but most of them not. No, because you're starting with piano strings, and there's no percussion instrument that uses string. I mean, I made one up. I made a box where I stretched a string across it, and hung a piece of tin, and then you plucked it, and you made this rattling sound. That was, you might say, a little like a prepared piano sound in a way, but otherwise the initial material, which is to say the strings, is not like any percussion instrument, so it's going to be different.
Rock and roll. Yeah. What's your relationship to rock and roll or jazz?
It's mixed. Jazz in one form, Dixieland jazz, was very important to me when I was a kid. It's the only sort of non-classical music I listened to with pleasure. When I was about 14, 15, 16. I and my schoolmates in New York, we used to go here. There were concerts every weekend, and we went there, which they're not expensive. And some of the best jazz players, in jazz history were there. They were wonderful, fantastic. And I admired that a But I couldn't relate it to what I was doing.
Mm.
Yeah, it was something totally different, and I liked it. And then popular music I didn't pay much attention to until I met my wife, Holly, in 1962 maybe.
Mm.
And I hadn't, I didn't pay any attention, and it was when the Beatles were starting.
Mm.
And I kind of didn't. And she said, no, you should listen to this. And she made me listen to the Beatles, and I suddenly realized, yeah, this is good. This is very good. And for a while I was very taken with the early rock and roll, Beatles, Rolling Stones, whoever, all the groups. We followed that, and I liked that a lot. In fact, to the extent that I went and bought myself an electric guitar. And I made some pieces. They're not at all like rock pieces, but just the instrument interested me, and the sonorities, the sounds interested me, and we had been working with amplification. Cage's cartridge music was from the 50s, the whole notion of using contact microphones, all of that, we'd already done that. And so the rock and roll, you might say, was a sort of more formalized version of using high volume amplification, but amplification also to make particular kinds of color. Because an electric guitar can make amazing sounds because of the amplification. And of course, obviously boxes and stuff, but at the beginning they were all very simple, the various electronic modifications. I like that a lot.
Yeah. I know, because I know Frank Zappa, he was very inspired.
It's in the other way, yes, yeah. No, there was a certain amount of crossing over. And
John Zorn and Pink Floyd.
Pink Floyd especially, when I came to London in 1967, one of the first things I was involved in, was a project that Cornelius Card used as a piece of his that he did with this group AMM, and I joined them. We did it in some club, in some cellar somewhere, and we were later told that Pink Floyd had been there, and then when you listen to some of their early albums, you can hear that they paid attention to what we were doing. So there's been a certain amount of crossover, and what else along those lines? Well, this is much more recent, but Sonic Youth got interested in our music, and they did a recording about 3 years ago, called The End of the 20th Century, or Goodbye to the 20th Century, which was a 2 CD set, which was music by Cage, Steve Reich, Pauline Oliveros, myself. They did 2 long pieces of mine where I played with them. I trained them for that. So that's we actually worked together. So there are these crossovers, these connections, especially with what sort of independent rock or alternative rock music, and the new music. Yeah, those are not. And Zorn is a very good example of that. I mean, he does both himself. I mean, he works in an area that's very close to pop music, but at other times it's pure, avant-garde concert music. But his ideas, and I mean, I hadn't thought about it much, but he actually said so once, that his notions, he has these game pieces, where people have cues, a piece called Cobra, for instance, and that basically comes out in my music. I mean, that notion of cueing people when they should play by what they hear and things like that. That's that kind of open form which he adopted. The material he uses with it is totally different from mine. I mean, mine is very sparse and spare, and he uses big blocks of sound and people improvising stuff. But the basic idea is connected.
So, would you say that's the process or method, or?
Yeah. It's even a formal idea.
Right.
Structure.
So you don't hate rock music or jazz?
Oh, no, not at all. It seems to me now that it's not very interesting. My kids listen to it a lot, and it's rare that I'll hear something that they play me that I like. Which may be just because I'm getting older, or something, because they seem to find it just fine, so do I. But I'm less engaged with it than I used to be.
What about Cage's relationship to jazz or rock?
He never liked jazz. And
why is that?
I'm not sure. I mean, I sort of know. I think his image of jazz was very, well, it's funny. There is this piece called Credo in Us. You know that? Percussion with a keyboard. And there are long stretches of that where the keyboard plays boogie-woogie. I mean, there's no question about it. It's that kind of rhythm, and it's a striding bass. And so he clearly, like everybody in the 30s and 40s, that music had some effect on him. On the other hand, when he spoke about jazz, he always was very dismissive. And what he said, what he found uninteresting, I think 2 things. One, he never liked steady beat. Bach was a problem for him because of the constant steady beat. And jazz, of course, has the same thing. He didn't like that. But the other thing he didn't like was the improvised part of jazz, because he thought it was too schematic. It was too mechanical.
The improvised
yeah,
part.
and it's true that you do get. I know what he means. I mean, if the players are not absolutely top, the best, or are in some way are tired that night or something, they do tend to fall back on routines.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, and
but
that
this kind of jazz is bebop.
exactly,
This kind of jazz,
and
right? Not free jazz that we have today, right?
No, I don't think he ever really knew about it. I have a feeling. I don't think he knew about that. But his suspicion was that there was too much of a tendency to fall back on fixed, routines, and he didn't think that was good at all. He didn't like that.
No, so he didn't like rhythms.
Fixed a steady rhythm, again, that kind of thing. Which is paradoxical, because when rock and roll came along, he liked that. I could never understand that, because if anything has boring rhythms, it's rock and roll. I mean, it's very powerful, but it's it's certainly not subtle. But somehow, I think what he liked about rock and roll was a couple of things. Partly it was cultural. It was just that everybody was, that young people were all doing it, and that you could do it more or less independently. It wasn't only the big groups, but there were garage bands. There was all that kind of general music making in a free way. That he liked that, and then he liked the sound it made. He liked the noise. I mean, he liked the amplification. He liked that it was very loud and
the electric part.
The electric part, exactly. Because it came, actually, as I was saying, it came at a time when we were interested, or he especially and David Tudor were interested in a lot, in live electronic music and amplified music, and using contact microphones and all that, and not worrying about too loud. I mean, they probably destroyed all our ears at the time, but so that's yeah.
I have a few more questions about the preparation that I forgot, so I'll just hop back and ask about that. We talked about it when we were preparing.
Yeah.
What do you think is the most important thing when you're preparing a piano? The absolute most important thing. Besides from having piano and having preparation.
Yeah, the preparations. Well, you should. It should sound right. You should get the sound right.
What do you mean?
I mean, it's hard to tell what that means, because.
Is that individual, you think?
I think it has to be, because unless you have a recording. I mean, I think people now, for example, with cages, snows, and interludes, there are two views. One is that from the point of view of later Cage, you say, well, everybody does what they can, and you work with the piano you have, you work with the material you can find, and you just make a preparation which sounds okay to you and you play. Other people are much more, want to do it historically accurate. It's like the old music movement, right?
Yeah, so that's the second view.
That's the second view. And in that one, you go, for example, to the recording by Maro Jamin, which is basically, Cage made those preparations for her and probably showed her how he wanted the sounding like that, and you try to duplicate those as closely as possible. I think there's even a recording out now which uses the same type of piano that Cage had, so as to get it, I think Cage wouldn't care one way or the other. I mean, that would seem to him fussy, kind of or a very academic thing to do, but perhaps if you can do it, why not? It's not uninteresting to see what he had in mind originally. But things change, and things sound different. I mean, the way those pieces, if you play them exactly the way they were played then now, they would still sound different, because we hear differently now. So in that sense, it doesn't necessarily mean that much to do it. It means something to the extent that you have something clear to focus on. I mean, it's true that if you decide just to sort of do it the way you want to do it, it becomes very subjective. And your taste comes into it again, and your individual kind of, and it might be useful to have some kind of objective system which you use as a way of helping you do it. To that extent, I could see that it would be useful to try to, work as much as possible within the original conditions that Cage set.
But you still have the preparation
chart, exactly.
Table, right?
Yeah.
So that would be something objective, right?
Yeah, but up to a point, because I suppose one screw is not so different from another, but it might be. The pianos, as we already said, could be different, and so the measurements become meaningless. I mean, as soon as you go from a 5 foot to an 7 foot instrument, or even a 6 foot instrument, it doesn't matter anymore. I mean, it does. It gives you a rough idea, but 2.5 inches, he's more detailed. It's 2 3/4 inches. suddenly it could be 3, it could be 2, it could be, you know. So all of that suddenly goes, you know, becomes more vague.
Do you think it would be a paradox between the second view that you're talking about, the academic way doing it, and the way that Cage never wanted things to be repeated?
Yeah, a little bit. I'm trying to remember occasions on which Cage's earlier music was played when he was there, and I could talk to him about it. And I think he had no fix. He was not doctrinaire about it. He was certainly not concerned with purely a totally authentic performance. On the other hand, I don't think he would have preferred a kind of very free performance. I think he felt there were correct ways of doing it, and he insisted on those as much as possible.
So you can't just do anything?
No, absolutely not. No
you
way.
should follow the preparation.
As much as possible, as much as you absolutely can, yeah.
And then just make it sound right, like we were talking about before.
Yeah.
So, what kind of view, the first or the second, would you prefer if you were supposed
I think I might lean to the second.
Hmm.
Because it's in the spirit in which the music was written in the first place. And if you want to do Cage that's open-ended, that's free and so forth, then do later Cage. You know, I mean, that music was written in a different spirit, and I think, it's a little bit, it's hard. I mean, and it depends on who's playing and what circumstances. It's like whether you play Bach on the harpsichord or the piano. You know? I'm not really, it's somewhat like that. I mean, there's some people who are purists and say you can't play any Bach on the piano. Right? It seems to me kind of silly, you know, because partly harpsichords are not that easy to come by all the time, and there's some really good pianists who play. I mean, Glenn Gould, as far as I'm concerned, plays Bach as well as you can play Bach, and he happens to do it on a piano, so I don't have a problem with that. And he does it in full awareness, and you know, having studied the music very carefully, in full awareness of what it sounds like on a harpsichord. It's not that he imitates it exactly on the piano, but he knows that there's certain things that are totally inappropriate to that music, like great crescendos and stuff like that, which you can't do on a harpsichord, and bringing out individual voices as opposed to balancing all the different lines equally the way that they would have to be. And he does that on the piano, and that seems to me fine. Even though, and the other thing to think about is what would Bach think about that? And Bach seems to me, in many ways, an experimental composer. I mean, he was always trying different things out, and he would have been very interested in the piano, it seems to me, and very curious to see what these pieces sounded like on the piano. So you have to take all of that into account. You know? There are other people that are very uptight about their music. They want it to be just exactly so, and then you need to try to do it that way if you want to do that music.
But would you, if you was to perform... If you were to perform the sonatas and interlude, for example, would you go, if you were to choose the second way that you were talking about, would you go so far that you would do the same preparations as on the recording with Genius?
Yeah. It's unlikely that I would be in that situation, but I probably would try to do that. Knowing that I probably couldn't, you know, but nevertheless, it would be something, it would be a goal to aim at, it would be something that would focus, you know, what I was doing, and I think I would do that.
It would still be different anyway.
Of course it would be different, As I said, you know, one hears it differently, but it's a starting point, and because it's there, why not use it? You know?
Yeah, right. What about the unicorda pedal? What do you think about that? What's the...
That's very important because you can change the sound quite strongly. I mean, it's a very useful thing because it means that all the preparations in the high register that use, or in the 3-string register, that use screws, or that are between the 2nd and 3rd strings, counting from the bottom, will change color. So it's like a register on a harpsichord. You can play it one way, and then you put the unicorda down, you play it, it sounds quite different.
So you can't use the unicorda unless it's noted,
right? Absolutely not. No. Or the sustaining pedal.
Yeah,
those are absolutely straight. He knows, me too, you know, we talked about this with No, those are there precisely to get a certain kind of sound.
So you're not supposed to use it anywhere, only unless it's noted, right?
No. Because as you say, it's not piano music. I mean, in piano music it's sort of allowed, you know, your pedal is at the discretion of the performer. Sometimes people will write it in, but you use it for various, you know, effects of sonority, but there the sonority is already given by the preparations and by the specific writing of the pedal indications,
I remember from the sonatas and the interludes, Cage doesn't write very much bowing, you know. Is that because he doesn't want there to be any lines?
So where is this?
In the sonatas and interludes.
Oh, you mean phrasing?
Yeah, phrasing.
Okay.
Yeah, phrasing.
I hadn't thought about that.
Do you think, I mean, in other pieces by other composers, you always put on...
Yeah. Well,
phrasing.
again, it depends. I think I know the answer. I think he was willing to leave it open. But to leave it open, and his model for that would have been earlier music. I mean, you look at Bach. Bach doesn't use phrasings. And the real model for those pieces seems to me Scarlatti. They're all not all of them, but many of those sonatas are basic Scarlatti form sonatas. You know, A, B, B. 2 sections, each repeated, right? And you look at Scarlatti sonatas, you just have notes, right?
Yeah, right.
You may not even have a tempo. You certainly don't have any phrasings. You figure it out, right? And the same with Bach. You know, Bach is... This whole notion of open notation, for me, comes from that early music. Yeah. Now, it's true that in the early music, there were conventions. I mean, you were supposed... If it was a certain, say, 3/8 or 6/8 or something like that, then you probably... And if you looked at the notes, you'd realize it was a certain kind of a dance, or it's based on a dance form, and then you had to observe that. And that's... He doesn't say, play it alla tedesca or something like that. You just have to know. You know that that's the way it works. And everybody knew that. But even so, I think that music is written so that it can be played differently at different times.
Okay, so that's in some way...
Exactly. It's indeterminate. It's indeterminate.
Yeah, right.
You know, obviously in a different way. But
so you're allowed to put on phrasings that you feel is natural.
Yeah.
What about your music?
Same thing.
Same thing.
Yeah.
What do you think about when you're preparing? Do you need the very best instrument, or do you think you just need an instrument?
Not necessarily. I don't think it matters that much, fortunately, because often when you go somewhere, they won't give you the best instrument. They give you the second piano.
But that's my experience too. I don't get necessarily better sounds from a better instrument because you're making.
I mean, it's true. We were talking about this the other day. Is that Cage does a lot, and I do too, with the mixture of straight piano sounds with the prepared sounds. So at the least the piano should be very well tuned. I mean, so that, you know, when you're playing just piano sounds, they should sound good. You know, they should sound like an okay piano. Okay. But mixed in with the prepared sounds, it doesn't. I think it's not that crucial. It doesn't have to be a Bösendorfer, you know. Yeah, if it's in tune, if it's in reasonably good shape, then it's probably okay.
So that's very important anyway to have it tuned, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay.
All right. Good. All right. Good. It's almost 10:30. It's 10:30. I'm going to go and get some gas.
Nå er jeg hos Christian Wolff. Dette er soverommet mitt. Så kommer vi inn i stua. Nå skal vi gå og Ulven, vi skal reise til flyplassen. Hello, Mr. Wolff.
Hi.
What are you doing?
Making us some lunch. Sandwiches.
This is his kitchen. Hello.
This is new, this whole idea of filming everything in life.
Yeah.
I didn't grow up with it. I suppose it's nice. I prefer looking at photographs because it's... to watch a film, it's a much more elaborate production. You have to sit down somewhere, you have to find a TV, do all that stuff. I did something stupid. I meant to bring those little tomatoes, and I forgot.
Oh, the cherry ones.
The cherry ones. I'm really sorry about that. I will miss them. Do you have some water with you? Do you travel with water to drink?
Denne ulven, han har veldig masse grønnsaker. Han har en hel åker med bare salater og tomater og poteter og... I'm just telling you about your garden, that you have a lot of vegetables. Så han lager det meste selv. Han lager musikken selv, og han lager maten selv. Very good cook. Nå lager han lunsj til meg, som jeg skal ha med i bilen, for det tar 3 timer å reise til Boston, til flyplassen herfra. Og det er jo ganske lenge. We're traveling by car to Boston. Takes 3 hours, right?
I think so, yeah. It depends a lot on the traffic.
Mm.
And then I'm a little worried because when you get to Boston, the way to get to the airport, they've been rebuilding those roads.
Mm.
And I haven't driven down since they changed it, so it may be a little tricky because I don't know my way anymore. It used to be very easy, but now I'm not sure. So I hope we'll... Do you know exactly what time your flight is going?
I have to...
Well, the CD is in there.
So you listen there?
Sometimes I listen on the radio, on the car player. And I play piano, just in there, just listen to... I play things on the piano to hear them.
So this is where you listen to music. One of the places at least. Og her spiller vi piano. Det var litt mørkt her inne nå. Her har vi preparert.